near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you mentees? It is Monday, so that means it's time to take an advanced look at the latest omnibus coming out from Marvel Comics. Today, we're going to be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 4. This is the 2023 printing, and we'll be comparing it to the original printing. So, stay tuned. Before getting started, I do want to thank David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us an advanced copy of this omnibus. This omnibus is due out in the direct market and book market on August 8th or 9th, depending on where you get your books. What we're looking at here is the direct market cover. On the left-hand side is your standard edition cover. That one supplied by Frank Cho, and the direct market cover supplied by the legendary John Romita Sr. But let's shift the focus back to this. Here we have the new printing, the one printed in 2023, and this is the original printing printed in 2019. And we have a volume 5 already. It's crazy how fast they are coming out with these. But to a lot of us fans of these particular books, I guess not fast enough. This is the classic cover here to issue 135, which has Harry, and then has the Tarantula, and of course, the Punisher. This is when he makes a return. Now, the spines, again, they're doing these kinds of spines instead of this spine. Showcasing the picture down here. The letters are smaller, the Amazing Spider-Man. And Volume 4. And here we have Lee, Conway, Romita, Kane, and Andrew. Over here you have their full names. On the back of the book, it's the same thing that they've been doing for all these Omnis, and that is collecting the covers. And the covers this time around, though, are a little bit bigger compared to the covers here. The ISBN, rated T, and down here, and then what it collects. Both the original printing and the new printing retail for $125. Now let's look underneath the dust jacket. Now by this point, they had stopped using the faux leather, so they had gone and changed it to this. Here is the spine right there, a different picture of Spidey in volume 4, and then the back of the book, whereas this one doesn't have anything back there. Now I am going to be doing a comparison a little bit later, but first, I'm going to open up the book and talk about the stories in here. And I've done an overview of this one. My goodness, how fast time just goes by. In 2019 when it came out. I'm not sure what I said. I never go back and watch my old videos. This time around, though, I do want to talk about a couple of major plot points in here. Not the details or in-depth overviews of these particular stories, but I do want to point out a couple of plot points that a lot of you probably already know what I'm going to be talking about. It's comics that forever changed the character of Spider-Man. But just in case some minor spoilers, like I said, I'm not going to go into heavy details or anything, but the books are over 40 years old, so... But I also respect the fact that, some people haven't read this stuff. And if you haven't, by all means, skip to the part where I do the comparison, and skip to the part where I'm talking about the build of this omnibus. All right, let's open this up and talk about the stories collected in here and show off this wonderful era of art. All right, let's go ahead and crack this open. We have some black end sheets right there. The Amazing Spider-Man with this iconic scene fighting the Green Goblin. Volume 4. All the people that put this book together here. It's the fight with Mysterio and his gang. Volume 4, this iconic image from issue 129. Writer Stan Lee, of course, then taking a back seat because he was busy writing I think he was working on a movie script. Jerry Conway coming in at the young age of 19 and taking over Spider-Man. Because Roy Thomas was like, no thank you. Even though he co-plotted issue 105. He wasn't about that teen drama, even though he was writing X-Men. Gil Kane stepping in after John Romita takes a step back, but John Romita stays for a while doing inking and embellishing and finishes. Ross Andrew, of course, coming in as the new artist after Gil Kane leaves the book. You have Jim Starlin's first Marvel work in here, and Paul Rainman. Here's your inkers right here, Frank Giacoia and John Romita, like I was talking about, Jim Mooney, Bill Everett, just to name a few. Your letters, like Sam Rosen, John Duffy. Colorist, unfortunately uncredited, but like this is the era when they started crediting the colorists, and Stan Goldberg is one of them, and as well as all these folks over here, and your editors. You have the opening forward from the Marvel Masterworks of Amazing Spider-Man number 10, written by Roy Thomas. This is a really short one, though. And it's pretty much talking about how he co-plotted issue 105. So collected in here is Amazing Spider-Man 105 to 142, Giant Size Superheroes number 1, and then Marvel Superheroes number 14. Also in here is the annual number 9, but because it's just a reprint, it's not much of a collection, so it's just a cover. All right, so we kick it off with issue number 105, again, plotted by Roy Thomas. Stan Lee taking a back seat because he was helping to write a movie script, I believe, and didn't have enough time to plot it. So it is the return of the Spider Slayers, which continues into the next few issues. You have John Romita supplying the artwork, Frank Giacoia doing the inks, and teaming up with Doc Connors there to take down the Spider Slayers. And this is during the time when Peter Parker had things going the right way for him. He was dating Gwen Stacy. Mary Jane was in his life, but more of a party girl. Aunt May finally stopped trying to die. It just felt like that was a lot that was happening in the first 3 volumes. Like here she's like, yeah, I think I'll hang around for a while. You have the return of Flash Thompson coming back from Vietnam, coming with his own problems. As a matter of fact, these are some of John Romita Sr.'s favorite issues. Doctor Strange helping a bit there with those particular issues. And then you have the final work by Stan Lee and John Romita Sr. on a Spider-Man ongoing series. And it's sad to read the forward by John Romita because he talks about he didn't know it was going to be the last time that they worked together on Spider-Man. And just time goes by so fast. Now, we both lost Stan and we lost John Romita earlier this year, but Stan's been gone for a couple of years now. It's just weird to think about how much they did together because, I know that Steve Ditko and Stan created the character, but John Romita, I think, really set the bar for the artists that were to come after him to draw Spider-Man in these crazy poses and the buildings and the backgrounds and the supporting cast was just beautifully done by him. And the last issue that Stan Lee worked on is The Birth of the Gibbon. So the Gibbon was kind of a bet that he lost. This is all found in the introductions, talking about how he was at a zoo and some kid was like making a bet with him about whether he could create a character out of a gibbon. And he did. So he ends up leaving the book, and in steps in Jerry Conway. Again, 19 years old, really young to be writing such a freaking title. This was the flagship title. At this point, it was outselling the Fantastic Four. And to be given it to the hands of somebody that's 19, that's just crazy. But, there's some really talented people. It's not like Jim Shooter wasn't 13 years old when he was writing comics, or Grant Morrison, or all these people had to start somewhere. It's just for some reason they just seem a lot wiser. I don't know why. So yes, the storyline of the Gibbon teaming up with the Kraven the Hunter there. You have the return of Doc Ock. This is the story where Spider-Man ends up losing his mask. I think J. Jonah Jameson ends up taking it, so he goes to a costume shop to borrow this particular mask. First appearance of Hammerhead, now playing a bigger part in Spider-Man's life. A thorn at his side, if you will. Here's the Smashers issue, and that has artwork in here by Jim Starlin, long before the Warlock series, or long before Thanos was even a thing. The Disruptor right there, and then the return of Smasher. Then you have the fight with the Hulk. Now, the fight with the Hulk takes 2 issues because it leads from issue number 119 into the fight over here in 120. After this, though, is when things are about to change. So, remember when I said that I wanted to talk about some spoilers? Well, this is what I was wanting to talk about. So, just in case you don't want anything spoiled for you about this book, move on to where I'm talking about the build of it. But for anybody that has read it or doesn't care about spoilers from stories that took place 40 years ago, I'm going to be talking about two big story arcs in here that take place in issue 121 and 122. And that is, of course, oh, Turning Point, by the way. This introduction is really excellent to read the behind the scenes as to how this story came about. All right, so the title is left until the end of the book, by the way. And in here, you're led to believe that someone close to Spider-Man is about to die. Someone that he cannot save. Now, John Romita Sr. wanted to kill Aunt May. He wanted to drive Peter Parker, not insane, but wanted to push him more towards this idea of great responsibility with great power. The same thing that Uncle Ben did. And Jerry Conway was all about killing a character off. However, he said, old people die all the time. Something along those lines. He said it a lot better than I did. But why don't we kill somebody that will really impact him, that nobody will see coming? Now, this is also during the time when Norman Osborn was the Green Goblin, and he knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, so he knew about his identity. He knew about his friends, because his own son, Harry, was friends with Peter. Harry, of course, dealing with some drug issues in the previous Omnis and in this one too. But what he does is he ends up kidnapping Gwen Stacy. This is the final fight between Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy. And many of stories were spun out of this. No pun intended. So the Goblin throws Gwen Stacy off of the bridge, and Spider-Man tries to catch her with his webbing, and he succeeds, and he thinks he did it, but little did he know that her neck snapped. And the woman that he loved, the woman that he was dating during this time, the woman that he was going to marry, his one true love, died on that bridge that day. And of course, this leads into the next amazing issue of 122, which is the Green Goblin's Last Stand. And as I was saying, the title here, The Night Gwen Stacy Died. Letter pages intact like they always are for these Silver Age books and Golden Age books. So the Goblin's Last Stand, this is such an, it's crazy to think about how iconic these stories were back to back, because after Gwen dies, it's not like Peter Parker's throwing jokes and quips around. It's really impacted his life. So he goes and fights the Green Goblin, claiming that he's going to kill him, and then changes his mind, realizes that, any other time I would have killed him, but I'm going to be a murderer if I do that. So while his back is turned, this is all, of course, borrowed in movies, just like the death of Gwen Stacy was. The Goblin takes his Goblin glider and controls it to just spear Peter Parker, Spider-Man, through his back. But instead, Peter moves out of the way, and it goes through Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, killing him. And it's such a wonderful moment, because Peter realizes that, killing the Goblin really doesn't take the pain away. He thought it might feel better, but doesn't mean anything. And this is one of my favorite scenes in comics of all time. This shows the character of Mary Jane. Now, before this, I mentioned Mary Jane was the party girl, didn't have any time for Peter. And he kind of lashes out at her here because she's there to console him. She's like, I'm really torn up too because Gwen was my friend. And he's like, get out of here. You wouldn't even be sorry if your own mother died. He's being cruel because this is how he's handling pain. But my favorite moment about this page right here is the lack of dialogue, where he tells her to get out, and she doesn't. She turns back around with a tear rolling down her face and closes the door to be with him. You don't need dialogue for that. That is just beautiful storytelling. Just absolutely perfect. And I have to talk about those moments because, since this, we've had Since Past, we've had the Clone Saga, and the Clone Saga starts really in this omnibus. We've had all these stories that kind of go back to these particular moments. But when you read this, you got to put yourself in the mind of somebody that was reading comics back, like a teenager that was reading Spider-Man Monthly. Nothing like that had ever been done in comics. Yes, Uncle Ben died, right? But we didn't really get to know Uncle Ben. He was in Amazing Fantasy 15. Gwen, you learn to grow to love and just have a crush on. And the best ever forward I ever read by Peter David was in his Death of Jean DeWolf. And the opening was talking about how he had left comics when he went to college. Then he was at a party, somebody had comics, and he was asking, "Hey, what did Spider-Man and Gwen ever get married, Peter Parker?" And they were like, "No, Gwen died." And he was destroyed. He was like, why would somebody do that? Why would a comic creator destroy somebody like Gwen Stacy? That these things aren't supposed to happen. These are getaways. And I thought that was such a strong feeling for what happened to a fictional character. But a lot of us really do get attached to these characters like they're almost family. These are our escape, and when something happens to them that is wrong or we don't agree with, of course, that's how we get these emotions. Luke Cage is hired to go and take care of Peter Parker. We have the return of J. Jonah's son here, which this time around he becomes the Man-Wolf. But the next the Kangaroo bouncing back here. The Vulture makes a return. And as you're reading this, if you're reading this for the first time, you'll notice that Peter's dealing with these issues, right? Like, he lost Gwen. He doesn't know exactly how to deal with it. He's not out there making jokes at first, but then it's kind of like back to business in a way. It's back to being Spider-Man because he has to be. And of course, I have to talk about this very iconic issue, introducing us to one of Marvel's most beloved character. And of course, I'm talking about the Jackal. That's right. The Jackal is responsible for, well, never mind, a much beloved story. I can't go on with that joke. Yes, this is the Jackal's first appearance, but really I'm talking about the Punisher, or the Executioner as he was going to be called. And this is when Ross Andrew was really starting to get a hold of the book and just kind of making it his own. Now, the Punisher isn't your vigilante like he is later on as we come to see him. Like, Jerry Conway kept wanting to bring him back. Jackal's hiring him to take care of Spider-Man. Now, we are introduced to the Jackal in this issue, but then there's some clues there that maybe the Jackal had been around for a while. So he might have some kind of secret identity. And you can find out for yourself who that is. Now, we also get a really interesting return here of Liz Allen. And yes, I will talk about the Molten Man. Now, Liz Allen was a character from Steve Ditko and Stan Lee's era of Spider-Man when he was in high school. Once graduated, though, they kind of went their separate ways. He really liked her, but then she ended up leaving him. But she comes back here. Now, she comes back here for different reasons. She's brought in with the Molten Man. So the Molten Man also comes back, but as you find out, they do have... they are connected, Liz Allen and the Molten Man. Morbius and Man-Wolf do a team up there for that giant-sized superheroes #1 that eventually spotlights both Man-Wolf and Morbius. And see, eventually life goes on, right? And Peter smiles. I'm sure you saw the picture of Peter smiling there. Here we have the introduction of the Tarantula. And again, Peter trying to get his life back. Now, you also get a big wedding here that I'm not going to spoil. You can find out who gets married, which to me is just one of the most interesting marriages in Marvel Comics. Here you also see the transition of Mary Jane Watson go from party girl to maybe a potential love interest for Peter Parker one day. Not yet, though. The wound is still fresh. And then you get the return of the Green Goblin. This right here, I think, is one of my favorite scenes, mainly because you see it also in the pages of, was it Daredevil? So Mary Jane and Peter Parker are attacked, so somebody has to know who Peter Parker is, and we get a new Green Goblin here. And you can read a little bit more about that later on as to who the new Green Goblin is, if something had happened to the original Green Goblin. Now, these fights go on for a couple of issues. You have the Mind Worm. There he is, Mind Worm coming into the stories. Grizzly. And the Jackal, again, playing a major part in the background, like hiring all these goons to go after Peter Parker, and you don't quite know why, what it is, what he wants revenge for. Then you get this issue back here, Amazing Spider-Man 142. Remember when I said it's Mysterio and all his goons? And this is the return of Mysterio. So it is the return of that character, but is it really him? Because wasn't he supposed to be out of commission? Now this is really cool. This is Marvel Superheroes number 14. But before that, you get a little bit of a synopsis as to what's collected in here. And on the left-hand side is the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 9. And it's only the cover because it is a reprint of Spectacular Spider-Man number 1, the fight with the Green Goblin. So it's done in a flashback. Now, that is collected in Omnibus Volume 2, so they didn't collect it in here. And as well as Spectacular Spider-Man issue number 2. Now, those were the one-shots that were done in black and white. It's not the ongoing series that happens a little bit later. So, Marvel Superheroes, the little blurb was about how Ross Andrew was kind of testing out whether he would be the penciler of Spider-Man. And at first, Stan Lee was like, yeah, I don't know if he can do it. So this story was scrapped. So they decided to print it in the Marvel Superheroes number 14. That's why it's all the way back here. So it is still in the book. Now in here you get house ads. You get articles on these creators. You get the calendar, the not crossword puzzles, but the puzzles. This is a checklist here. There's the crossword puzzles. Everything you always want to know about Spider-Man with John Romita right there, with Stan Lee over here. So just articles and interviews on him. Is this the TV show, I think? I didn't even talk about the Spider Buggy, but the Spider Buggy or Spider-Mobile makes an appearance here. The Marvel Treasury edition right there. Collecting classic stories. House ads, original pages, original page art. The book has 976 pages. So you get some layouts here for Gil Kane's art. Love when all this stuff is collected in the back of books. There's a lot of extras. This, I don't know who owns this, but my gosh. Oh, it's courtesy of the Heritage Auctions. The cover to Amazing Spider-Man 121. Internal artwork to issues 123. Layouts. Here's the character designs. The sketch for the Reaper, the Grim Reaper, the Executioner, the Punisher by John Romita. The cover right there to issue 129. Original art. And then the reprints here with Marvel Tells. And introduction by Stan Lee from the Spider-Man Green Goblin trade paperback. We've had these stories collected many times in different trades. The death of Gwen Stacy, the death of Gwen Stacy, the death of Captain Stacy, the death of the Stacys hardcover. So all the introductions are intact there. And you get the cover here to the standard edition in case you then wanted the Frank Cho one there. And then the end sheets. 976 pages. It is sewn binding. Now let's talk about the way the book lays over. Let's find a double page spread here. And we will come back to this because I'll be comparing it here in a little bit. But you do get some minor gutter loss right there. Minor. As far as the paper stock they're using here, honestly, it feels the same as the first printing, and that's just because I had it out, but just to kind of give you an idea, you do get a little bit of bleed through whenever there's light pages or white pages. Let me see here. Maybe you can see a little bit of the frame coming through. Not a lot, but it is there. Maybe a little bit right there. But it's something that I have to be looking for. Now, I did want to compare it to the original printing. This looks different. Obviously, this is the original printing here, and the new printing over here. So that looks different. That is the same. And like I said, the paper stock seems about as thick as the original printing. So the original printing had some bleed through, as does the new printing. Again, Donnelly printer and iMac printer here. Maybe you get a little more of the bleed through here. Here's your table of contents. And over here looking a little bit different. So Marvel Superheroes Volume 14. It's collected in page 872. And I think that has to do with this right here. Because Roy Thomas's intro was all one page here, whereas they split it up into 2 pages. And no, they didn't even bother letting you know where Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 9 is, because it's just the cover, right? So they were like, what's the point? As far as the colors here, it's a little darker over here than the original printing. Again, you see bleed through on both. A little more over here on the right-hand side. And again, the colors just being a little bit darker over here. I did want to do something really quick, and that is look at the back here to do a quick comparison, of these afterwards. And okay, so that's the same. Sometimes they change the order of things, and I wanted to make sure it's the same way. Actually, this looks a little bit lighter than that, so I guess it might vary page by page. Let's go back to this double page spread right here. A little more vibrant colors over here than over here, so these are a little bit lighter, which is weird because at the beginning they were a little bit darker. But as far as the way the book lays over, this lays over a little bit better because you get to see more of the art without having to hold it down. Whereas this, the way the eye is made, and I've stretched the spine 4 times now, you still get a little more of a gutter loss right there. But I did want to do that comparison. So that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcon at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that was the content, the page count, and build of this omnibus. And of course, the comparison to the first printing. In the comments down below, let me know if you missed out on it the first time around, and now is your time to get it. If you've never read the stories in here, and if you have, what you think about these classic, yet sometimes controversial stories. But don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.